Ladies and gentlemen, Town Hall prints the worst column I have ever read. Tonight on the Ephrom Josine show. Hello everybody and welcome to the July 9th, 2018 edition of the Ephrom Josine show. I'm your host, Ephrom Josine. I'm not going to do that intro often, by the way, where it's like tonight, but this is really the only thing I have to talk about this episode, because it's the only thing I really need to talk about. Because I am not kidding when I call this, quite possibly, the least self-aware and most nonsensical article I've ever seen. Okay? And the person who wrote this is easily the biggest right-wing hack of a columnist I've come across so far. Worse than Courtney Krischoff. Worse than Dennis Prager. Worse than Matt Walsh. Worse than Ben Shapiro. Worse than Steven Crowder. Worse than not Courtney Krischoff. Corey Stalling. That's the other one. Just worse than all of them. And I know the news has been focused on new Supreme Court Justice. I'll get to that tomorrow. I'll write about it in a column I publish on Wednesday. Probably get started on that column. However, this needed to be taken down right now. This is the dumbest thing I've seen in a long time. At the very least. The first thing you need to know is that this article is a smear against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Because of course it is. I've already talked about that on the blog extensively. This was written by a man named Kirk Schillinter, whom I think I may have covered once before. I don't know, that name sounds vaguely familiar, but it's called Democrats Love Socialism Because They Want to Take Your Stuff and Enslave You. That's not a parody title, this isn't from Patriot Hole or something like that. This is the real title on Town Hall, which is supposed to be a credible right-wing website, or at least credible to see the opinions of the right wing. It's hard to do things like this, by the way, because a lot of this, usually when you take on an article, there are bits and pieces you need to pick on which paragraph is great. I'm going to try and do that, but I may just end up saying halfway through, I'm reading the full thing, because there's just so much to go over. This is the first paragraph, by the way. Alexandria, and Town Hall has tons of pop-ups, by the way. There's like all these surveys, most of them are, on a scale of 1 to 10, how attractive is Donald Trump? Well, okay, that's unfair. It's usually on a scale of 9 to 10. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is less hideously unattractive than the usual Democratic potentate, and has therefore been anointed the new face of her pathetic party. This dumb woman, not even really, this is poisoning the well at its finest. And notice how it's not even as if they start with her policies and then call her dumb. She's dumb. Let's talk about that before we even get into her policies. And they even go on to call her ugly again. Took advantage of her even dumber New York district in order to get elected to Congress by calling herself a socialist. Yeah, the subject of thousands of Trader Joe's house brand Chardonnay toasts is a proud adherent to the ideology that butchered 100 million people in the last century. Oh, and here's some more loaded statements. Considering how much mainstream liberals hate us normal Americans for our militarily defending our rights, it's no surprise that they are looking to their leftist ancestors for some helpful hints about how to deal with us obstacles to their rightful and permanent domination of society. This is fear-mongering. This is just fear-mongering at this point. We're 2 paragraphs in and he's already just started fear-mongering. Ocasio-Cortez is an idiot. Doesn't even... Again, can you explain why before you just call her an idiot? like all adolescent socialists. So she's qualified to be the great pinko hope for the party in decline. Here's how bad she is. She apparently went to college, got a degree in economics, and still ended up a socialist. In case you're wondering, I've done some research on this guy. There's no evidence I've seen that he has any sort of education in economics. Now, normally I wouldn't bring it up, as there are economists I disagree with, Milton Friedman, for instance, or heck, even on the far left, someone like Richard Wolff. I disagree with him a lot. He's a downright Marxist. Friedman's an anarcho-capitalist, or was. He's dead now. I'm neither of those. But he's the one who brought it up. And if you're going to bring it up, then you might as well go all the way through. What's your training, Kurt? As for life experience, she was a bartender. Ooh, and then they go on to smear her for a while. And let me tell you this. I remember there was this Krang tweet a while ago, and it was making fun of this. I'm going to actually see if I can find it so I can quote it real quick. Here it is. It's from Krang T. Nelson on Twitter. Pretty screwed up that Ocasio was becoming a congressperson after being a bartender instead of the normal, respectful way where you're a shithead banker for 20 years and decide to run for Congress to get over your acrimonious divorce. I'd rather Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez be in Congress than Steve Mnuchin or Gary Cohn or any of the downright oligarchs in this country. Any of the bankers that crashed the economy. Point to me where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez contributed to the crash of '08. And she's a young person, does not count. And for that matter, I like this. Note, like all socialists, she does not dig socialism when it's applied to her. And then they link to an article of, I'm not making this up, it's from page6.com, which I've never heard of. So you know how great it is right there. I legitimately do my best to keep up with these obscure blogs that have like 2K readers. I've never heard of this place. This article's been sort of making the rounds on right-wing Twitter as of late. Essentially, it's her saying she was being greedy with the tip she got or something along those lines. Oh no, or she didn't tip enough in some cases. And I'm just saying and thinking, she was a poor bartender. Sometimes people want to tip more, but they just don't have the money. At least when they're saying this about Sanders or someone who's already in power, it makes, well, it doesn't really make much sense there, but it makes a little bit of sense because, okay, they already have the money. But in this case, and for that matter, can I point out just how we've all sort of accepted that everyone else but the owner of the restaurant has to pay the waiters and waitresses? Can I just point that out real quick? I think that needs to be pointed out. Actually, if tipping is socialism, then why is it conservatives constantly send studies my way that say they tip better than liberals, which, on a side note, doesn't make anyone's arguments better. Isn't tipping communism? I didn't know Donald Trump was actually a Maoist. Good to know. There's a fly in here, by the way, and it's really starting to annoy me. Doesn't help I reading this article. Socialism is the fetch of ideologies. That's a Mean Girls reference. A serious political column just referenced Mean Girls. This is the standards of town hall. And the left is always trying to make it happen. It's not going to happen. Not least of which, because us militant normals. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Have about 400 million or so guns, and we aren't super excited about giving up our stuff or our freedom to a bunch of Marxist weirdos who think we should have to work harder, so their voter base doesn't have to. No one has ever said that, but okay. Actually, what the people he's talking, the only people I can think of he's talking about are people who believe in a post-work society, and they don't believe anyone should work. And I don't even think the vast majority of people believe that. Kurt, have you actually ever talked to a communist? Did I kill it? I think I killed the fly. It keeps, like, getting right next to my ear. It's really starting to annoy me. A few years later, who's they anyway? Just a vague concept of communists? Tried again by releasing Bernie Sanders from the old commies home. You know, the old commies home. It's right next to the state home for the ugly. To nearly beat Stumbles Mick My Turn. Laugh at him. Just, look, Kurt, if I laugh at you, will you stop? That failed, and now it's this nitwit's turn to spray perfume inside the outhouse. Naturally, the pink dummy was summoned to make the rounds of MSNBC-NN. Oh yeah, you know, MSNBC-NN, ABC, 1, 2, 3, do, re, mi, you, and me. In the wake of her win over some other liberal tool. Okay, stop. It wasn't just some other liberal tool. It was, I think, the fourth in line in the Democratic Party, someone who was expected to, if Pelosi ever quit, become the Democratic House leader. A 10-turn congressman. You ignore all of that and just paint it as some other liberal tool. Because otherwise, you may have to face the reality that maybe if these ideas are popular and the American people aren't socialists, then therefore, come over here, Kurt, Cortez may not also be a socialist. This avatar of a failed 19th century death cult was hailed as the future of the Democrats because, as the leftist proceeds in the New York City goes, so goes America. She did the same tap dance about socialism that all these twits do. See, socialism isn't scary. Why, socialism is just another word for things we all do together. Well, you just sort of called tips socialism. At this point, I think the definition of the word is just anything, if you're really going to go that far. Except when the socialists are in charge, they kill you if you defy them. Which no right-wing leader has ever done, by the way. You know, Pinochet didn't throw people out of helicopters. Oh, and for that matter, no business leader ever killed any union leaders. That never happened. Out came the memes of snowplows and roads and bridges and all those other embeds of socialism. This is when I was officially convinced Kurt had no self-awareness. And all other socialism that we have right here, right now. Mind blown, huh? See? Socialism is just what? Basic infrastructure items we have here now. What every freaking society has, including Singapore and Switzerland, whose commitment to Adam Smith makes ours seem like a drunken Thursday night hookup. So again, what Cortez wants is not socialism, by your own definition. Therefore, Cortez must not be a socialist. Most Marxists know that's nonsense. He can read minds. But a good bunch of adherents of this poisonous philosophy actually believe it. And they aren't adherents of this poisonous philosophy. The pampered spawns of history's most prosperous and freest society. Just go to the index of economic freedom to see how true that one is. These goofs are really excited about something they can barely articulate, so they sputter. So they sputter and spit out words like justice and equality, and then get on their iPhones to call their disappointed dads because they are short on cash and want to see Mumford and Sons. I'm getting sick of reading this, man, so I'm just gonna skip to the very ending of it. As my new book, Militant Normals, explains in a non-FCC complacent terms, we regular Americans are woke to this scam. Yeah, you're woke. And that's what this article was. It was to promote a new book. We understand that all this socialist posturing is just another way to hand us the check for the deadbeats who vote for Democrats while stripping us of any say in our own governance. Yes, we're going to take away your right to vote. Don't worry. And, if there really are these big checks Democrats are giving out, you may want to explain why cities that are ran by Democrats typically have some of the most staunch war on homelessness laws I've ever seen. Or really, in the entire country. Google ways in which being homeless is being illegal or something along those lines. Mark's girl, he's clever, wants to start us off with free college, which means you pay for other people's college too. And other people pay for yours, but notice how there's no explanation that her fans contribute towards the benefit they are receiving. Yes, they do. They pay taxes. We're not gonna get rid of the tax rate. That's more you guys' thing. Notice how there's no... Oh, wait, I already read that. And then she's for free health care, which means you pay for other people's doctors too. Again, the recipients are not expected to work for their own benefit. If you want to make it so only taxpayers can get the universal healthcare system, I'm fine with that, dude. Now, mind you, we need to be more specific, like if someone is currently unemployed but they just got laid off, and what it'd be a little bit more complicated, but okay, if you want to create that general rule, I'd be perfectly fine with that. End of the day. Want to guess what she wants to do with the means of production? Nothing. Her website includes nothing about that. And with private property, let you keep it as long as you pay any certain tax rate on it that typically is considered fair in the rest of the industrialized world. And the right of people who oppose her schemes, that's actually on her website. Repeal the First Amendment. Anyway, that's it. I'm Ephrom, and good night.